Hey folks, if you're watching this video, it means I'm not in class teaching, or you just didn't get the notes done and you need to make up work. If I'm not there, I'm sorry. But to the point, welcome to Google Classroom. We have some new students. They've been invited to the classroom, but these new students, such as Stacy Vargas, Onik, Obed, Andrew, any students who happen to get to Google Classroom and don't see these notes, go ahead and save the file, and email it to them through the district Google account, and they'll receive it through Gmail, the district Gmail. You're using your district username and password, that email. So yes, you all have Google email accounts with the school district. You could download the file, this Chapter 8 notes, and then send it to them, or you could pair up together to look at the notes on the same computer screen. I'm going to recommend, if you are sharing the computer screen, I still expect, of course, that you have your own answers. And it might be very difficult for you to work together and not want to share notes or answers or observations. And I don't want you to lose points. I like teamwork, but I think if you're worried about getting zeros because it shows copied work, you best work alone. All right, having said that, let's look at the notes. So you click on it, and I already have it open right here. This is slide 1. We don't have to do slide 1. Most of these we've already done. These Chapter 8 problem questions, though: why are proteins so important to cell? What's happening inside our cells and organs when we fail to survive? And the third problem of this chapter that's important for us is how abiotic or non-living things impact organisms. How do they? So how do things in the environment that are non-living, like chemicals or pollution, how do they impact organisms? And we also look at it on the cellular level. What are they doing to the cells themselves that cause issues or maybe make it hard for us to survive? Pollution, chemicals, pesticides, anything in our environment that we might absorb. All right, we go over these questions because we have some videos that we're going to watch, and it reminds us of why we're learning Chapter 8 at all. And these videos, you're going to be asked to decide how do these questions have anything to do with those videos. And we'll talk about that when the time comes. But we need to skip to slide 19. So slide 19 is all the way right here. Slide 19 is the beginning of a term that we mentioned briefly last semester. It's called diffusion. Diffusion explains why things spread out. It explains why if you drop food coloring in water, like we did the iodine in the water for the diffusion lab, it explains why iodine spread out into the water and turned the water an overall golden or brownish red color. There's a reason for that. Everything in nature, whether it be an accidental fart someone's embarrassed to let out, or perfume, or dropping food coloring in water, everything in nature moves towards randomness. It spreads out into the environment. They move from areas where they're highly concentrated to where they're low concentrated. So things tend to move in directions where they're not found. So if you have a big pile of sugar, you can expect a big pile of sugar eventually to spread out in the environment and get spread out to areas where it's not common. If you have a lot of oxygen in the environment and you have less oxygen in your body, chances are that oxygen in the environment, in the atmosphere, is going to eventually move and spread out into your body, which your cells appreciate, right? You want oxygen in there. So things naturally move from high to low concentration. This explains what you noticed in the diffusion lab. We had that bag with the starch in it, and then we had that bag with starch in it surrounded by iodine. And what did the iodine do? It spread into an area where it was not found. So that iodine in the fluid went from a high concentration and moved into the bag where the starch was, where there was a low concentration of iodine. It moved naturally in that direction, and that explains why the inside of the bag where the iodine was turned purple. Again, from our diffusion lab, we had the starch bag surrounded in a fluid of iodine. Notice the little eyes stand for iodine, and inside I'm not quite sure what the letters stand for, but just know that it's starch in here. So it's a high concentration of starch inside and a high concentration of iodine outside. If things move based on diffusion, and this happens naturally, things just naturally spread out, the iodine will slowly move into the starch bag. And this should have been what you saw, where the iodine, there's less iodine now. There's a lower concentration of iodine on the outside because that high concentration to begin with moved into the bag. So it moved from a high concentration outside into where there was none, and you see that color change. That color change tells you that iodine from high concentration moved to a low concentration inside. And overall, we care about this because we like to think of this bag as a cell. In the plastic bag itself, that layer or the coating of plastic as a cell membrane. And we care about Chapter 8 in general because we want to know and study how things might go into cells. And we need to know this because we need to protect ourselves from things in the environment, toxins, pollution, chemicals that might be harmful or toxic, right? So, anyhow, let's move back to the slides. All right, the slides are kind of small, so I'm going to zoom in, as you should also. Back out once, and it's kind of a better size to manage. Okay, on the slide, so in your notes, you copy the definition. Remember, anything in a pink box, copy down. So you have this definition to copy down, but then you have these questions, these tasks. So underneath your definition in your notebook, you're going to complete the tasks. You are to look at image A and explain, using the word diffusion, what's happening here, or what you would expect to happen based on what diffusion is. You have a cell with 3 carbon dioxides on the inside, 2 on the inside, and on the outside you have 1 carbon dioxide and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have to think about where's the high concentration of oxygen, in or out, and where's the higher concentration of carbon dioxide, in or out. Based on this, you should already know which direction things are going to move. Things move from a high to a low concentration. Good luck answering this one. But it's clear there's a high concentration on the outside for oxygen and a higher concentration of carbon dioxide on the inside. So you would explain which direction do you expect carbon dioxide to move, in or out, and why, using the word diffusion. You repeat the same thing for scenario B. As you can see, there's lots of oxygen on the outside and very little on the inside. And lucky you, there's some arrows. So you just have to describe why this is happening. There are slides here, and you can, looks like you can, nope, you can highlight. But if you download this, and you can download it just for this function here, you can temporarily download it onto your laptop and open these slides. These slides will help you understand the topic better. I recommend you do it, always. These videos are there for your help. All right, let's move to the next slide. This next slide reminds you of the problems that are important to us. Why are proteins so important to cells? A topic we haven't discussed as much, but the proteins we are most concerned with in Chapter 8 are these types of proteins. Like these blue openings in the membrane are channel proteins, or a membrane protein. These proteins help decide what goes in and out. We can also look at this other picture from one of the very first slides, and it shows some proteins that aren't closed or that aren't open. They're closed, and with a cell itself, sometimes it can control when it's open and not using energy. So it can use energy in the form of this thing called ATP, which we haven't studied yet. But it can power the opening and closing of these cells. So cells sometimes can decide what goes in and out based on if it wants to open or close these proteins. So again, this says why are proteins so important? We're talking about those membrane proteins, the channel proteins, the proteins that can help transport things in and out. All right. It says what's happening inside our cells and organs when we fail to survive. And abiotic factors impact organisms. But how do they do this, right? So how do things in the environment, chemicals, pollution, potentially toxic chemicals, how do they affect our bodies? What might they be doing to our cells? And based on diffusion, we already have a reason why they might go in to your cells, right? Because things naturally move from high to low. Whether it's something good we need in our body that gets in there and helps us or not, things always will do this. That's why we have to be cautious, and we have to know about our environment. So here's the tales of caution. Luckily, these slides you can click right here. They've been approved for viewing, so you shouldn't have any problem watching them. And the first one is how drugs, and that would be pharmaceuticals, are polluting our drinking water. The second video is this idea of pesticides. So we have a community in Florida who are complaining about the poisoning of workers in the farms in this area of Florida. So we have two issues: how people are being exposed potentially to pollutants in our water that originated from pharmacy prescription drugs. So apparently we're finding high levels of prescription drugs in water, and we're finding potential issues with workers out in fields based on the pesticides they spray on plants, right? So you need to watch both of these videos. For each video, it's important to recognize that this is a serious issue that we all deal with. Even Oxnard right now, which is less than 100 miles away, they're complaining constantly about the toxins from pesticides in the farmlands that are right near their towns, right? So the question is, do they pose a risk, or why should we care? Your responsibility is to watch each video and pick one of these problems to discuss and summarize the video with. So, which one of these questions, after watching the video, makes most sense to you to focus on? So you'll say video 1, and you'll pick. So video 1, and you'll say equals problem 1, 2, or 3. And after that, you'll just write a paragraph of ideas from the video that you think explains or reminds us why one of these questions are important, or how the question relates to some of the important ideas from the video. So I basically want 2 paragraphs, one for each video, where you discuss one of these questions, or you relate facts from the video that show why we should care about one of these questions. Just try your best. With effort, you'll get a great grade. All you need to try, and you need to draw connections between one of these questions and the facts and information from the video. Good luck. The next slide is cells receive and lose solutes. So it's another reference. It's just helping us explain and understand diffusion again. But there's the question here. So how does the picture demonstrate diffusion? And you just have to review the definition of diffusion and then relate it to this picture. So explain what's happening here and why it represents diffusion. All right, here we go. This is a little messy, but we're going to take this slide and translate it to your notebook. How are we going to do that? In your notebook, you need to write the scientific problem, and you can also specify it's slide 23, as you can see, page 23, slide 23. Copy down the scientific problem, and be prepared to write 7 observations of things you see. For the remainder of this video, we'll focus on trying to complete this task, and then we'll have a second video that helps you with the rest of the slides, okay? All right. Here is the simulation. Pay close attention to what's happening. I'm going to let this play for 1 minute. Within that 1 minute, we need to recognize what's happening from your blood to the urine. And you can see these different particles are labeled here. We have proteins bouncing around. You have to make sure, are proteins moving into the urine or not from our blood? Again, this is what our kidneys do. Our kidneys filter blood and help transport things we don't need, or maybe things we have enough of, into the urine so they're removed from the body. We have wastes, which are in the blood. You could think of those as toxins. It could be alcohol in the blood. It could be, maybe just some molecule your body produced that it doesn't need anymore. And the proteins themselves, we just have there's all kinds of proteins, and some proteins flow in our blood and do work inside our bloodstream. All right. While this is playing, what we need to consider is what observations you're going to take. Any observations are good, but you need to continue watching this and come up with 7 observations. All right, like you did just 2 days ago with me, you're now going to reflect on a hypothesis. The question is, the original question was, how do membranes play a role in removing solutes in urine? You need to answer that with your hypothesis here. So create a hypothesis that explains how you think the membranes within are coating cells or creating boundaries between fluids. How do they play a role in removing solutes? And then here, you need to decide, is your hypothesis correct or not? and you need to use your observations to support it. One paragraph.